Hello, hi, a very happy good evening. So this is Krishna Ma'am. We're talking about the story of life on earth, and that's biology. So thank you so much for joining my lecture today. So today we're going to talk about part of human reproduction, fertilization and implantation. So I hope you guys are doing good and you guys had a splendid weekend. So here we are talking about fertilization and implantation. So let's finish off fertilization and implantation and let's see how much portion is left. So if I'm able to finish the entire thing today, so we're going to have something very new and exciting on Wednesday. But if not, you have to bear with me for one more lecture of human reproduction. So we'll be done with human reproduction. So I'll close off the entire human reproduction and then we can go ahead with something new. All right. So I have planned something really productive this time. So let's see how it works out. So talking about fertilization and implantation, so in the last lecture, so I was teaching you about menstrual cycle. So what are the 4 stages in the menstrual cycle and how it happens? So if you're able to recollect it, well and good. So otherwise, I'll give you a quick recap of what is menstrual cycle and we'll go to today's topic of how fertilization and followed by implantation, how it happens. All right, yes. So here we go. Fertilization and implantation, just give me a second. So we are almost done with the major things. So we are done with menstrual cycle. We are done talking about gametogenesis, oogenesis and spermatogenesis. We are done talking about the architecture of the female reproductive system and how the male reproductive system is designed. So today it is our time to talk about fertilization and implantation. All right. So let's see. I have got the slides for all. Let's see how much we can finish. But otherwise, just one more lecture will be done. All right, so let's move forward. So a recap of your menstrual cycle. So I hope you guys are able to recollect menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle happens in female primates like your monkeys, chimpanzees and man. So what happens in the menstrual cycle? So it happens on an average of 28 to 29 days and the start of menstrual cycle is called as menarche and the end of the menstrual cycle is called as menopause. So it is a complete cycle from the first day to the 28 days. So let's see how it happens. It happens due to the fluctuation of the hormones. We are basically your gonadotropins. So we'll talk about the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So you have 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. The first one is the menstrual phase. Or the bleeding phase. The second phase is the follicular phase, which is also known as the proliferative phase. The third one is the ovulatory phase. And the last one is the luteal or the secretory phase. So these are the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So what happens in these 4 phases? The first one, the menstrual phase or the bleeding phase. So this happens from day 1 to day 5, or you can say sometimes from day 1 to day 3. It depends or it differs from one individual to the other. Yes, Aman, hello, very happy good evening. So thank you so much for joining me today. So please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. So that is your menstrual phase. So what happens is the endometrium degenerates. So it comes out, the fluid comes out along the vagina. So it becomes the bleeding phase. So the bleeding phase is followed by your follicular phase or your proliferative phase. Anything that gets damaged in your body has a natural tendency to heal. So whatever has been degenerated begins to regenerate in the proliferative or the follicular phase. So at the same time, the primary oocyte along with the follicles also keep developing. So in this phase, the follicular or the proliferative phase, the amount of gonadotropins go up. That is your LH or your FSH increases. So this lasts for around, so say from the 6th day till the 13th day. Okay, so here the concentration of FSH and LSH goes high, especially LSH goes very high, which is called as the LH surge. So the LH surge causes the rupture of the Graafian follicles. So when it causes the rupture of Graafian follicles, it causes the release of your secondary oocyte, which is surrounded by the layer of zona pellucidia. Right, so this is so when the secondary oocyte comes out, that is your ovulatory phase. It happens on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle. So after the ovulatory phase, it is the luteal or the secretory phase. You can say this happens from the 15th to the 28th day. So where your endometrium is getting ready for implantation. So once your degenerated Graafian follicle gets converted into corpus luteum, so corpus luteum secretes progesterone, so which is a pregnancy hormone. So here the egg is awaiting fertilization. So once fertilization is done, then the menstrual cycle happens. Okay, so these are the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. So I hope you guys are able to recollect these 4 phases. Yes. Alright, so now we go to today's topic of fertilization and implantation. So what am I going to talk about this? So remember, the first meiotic division of your secondary oocyte is done. The secondary meiotic division is yet to occur. So in a sense, we are not completely done with the process of oogenesis. The egg is not yet produced, because I told you the second meiotic division happens at the time of the meeting of the sperm, or at the time of fertilization, right? Okay. So during copulation, so during the sexual intercourse, so copulation is the other term for your sexual intercourse, alright. So during copulation or sexual intercourse, the male external gamete, that is the penis, it inserts or it ejaculates sperm into the vagina of the female genital tract, a process called as insemination. So first step in your process of human reproduction was gametogenesis, that is the process of production of sperms. The second step in human reproduction is insemination. You should allow the gametes to meet. Only when they meet, the process of fusion happens, right? So in that sense, so this insemination is a type of gamete transfer where the gamete meets the other gamete. So here the male gamete, the sperm, is ejaculated or inseminated into the female genital tract or vagina. So the sperms are motile enough, they have a tail region, they have a mitochondria which supports the tail with the energy. So thus they swim, or they are motile, so that they rapidly move towards the cervix and the uterus. So if you remember the female reproductive system, so you have the uterus. The uterus opens into the cervix opens into the vagina. So this opens into the external female genitalia. Fine? Yes? Okay. So now the sperm, as it travels from the external male genitalia into the vagina, into the cervix, uterus, so here you have what is called as the fallopian tube or the oviduct. So this fallopian tube or oviduct has 3 parts. The first part is the infundibulum. The second part is the ampulla. The third part is the isthmus. So your sperm reaches this ampullary region where fertilization is going to occur. Okay, so the ovary has the ovum. So the ovum is collected from the ovary and the ovum waits in the ampulla of the fallopian tube. So the sperm reaches the ampullary region. So ampulla of the fallopian tube is where the fertilization takes place. So that is the location where fertilization is occurring. So fertilization occurs only if the ovum and the sperms are transported simultaneously. It is not that the ovum reaches there and waits for almost 21 days or 10 days for the sperms to come. The viability, the time that your ovum remains active genetically and metabolically, is only for 24 hours. So it is actually less than 24 hours. It is 12 to 18 hours, I would say. But your sperm, it can wait for 72 hours in the ampullary region for the release of the ovum. Okay, so it cannot have a large gap, so the time gap is very minimal. Okay, so that is why the reason is that not all copulation leads to fertilization. Not all copulation or sexual intercourse necessarily does not lead to fertilization, because probably the sperms and the ovum, the sperms of both the individuals respectively, are not simultaneously released. Okay. The process of fusion of the sperm and ovum is fertilization. So the ovum is present in the ampullary region. So the sperm travels to the ampullary region of the fallopian tube. Once they encounter each other, the process of fusion happens. All right. So that is your fertilization. So how it is happening? So the ovum is surrounded by zona pellucidea. The sperm induces changes in the membrane of the zona pellucidea. So now when there is a change in the membrane of your zona pellucidea, it makes sure that there is no other you can say that it makes sure that no other sperms are entering, because one egg fertilizes one sperm here. Right? So the secretions of acrosomes help the sperm to enter the cytoplasm of the ovum through the zona pellucidea and the plasma membrane. Once it enters, then happens a secondary meiotic division of the secondary oocyte. So here the division is unequal. You have a second polar body plus the haploid ovum that is an oocyte. So now the fusion happens and it forms a zygote. Right? So the sex of the baby is decided at this stage. So what are they saying? So it can be a bit confusing. So I draw the structure here. So we have the the ovary. Right? So this is the ampullary region. So this entire thing is the fallopian tube. Right? So the ovum, the egg is here. So the sperm is coming inside. Right? So the stage at which the egg is the secondary oocyte, which is surrounded by a layer called as zona pellucidea. Okay? So you have the sperm coming and reaching the ovum. So what happens? The sperm has a structure that is called as acrosomes. So acrosomes have a particular enzyme called as anti-fertilizin. So this anti-fertilizin enzyme, so it has a lot of enzymes. So basically this acrosome helps in the fusion. Actually it actually interacts with the layer of zona pellucidea and it changes the membrane permeability. So that no other sperm comes and interacts with zona pellucidea. Thus, by interacting, this sperm enters inside the cytoplasm of the secondary oocyte. So once the sperm has entered the secondary oocyte cytoplasm, so this is the cytoplasm, the space, right? The sperm has entered through the zona pellucidea layer. So you have outer layers that is called as corona radiata, but the sperm penetrates into it. Okay, so now the sperm has reached the secondary oocyte like this. So once it has reached, the secondary oocyte undergoes the secondary meiotic division. So this undergoes your meiotic division too, thus forming a haploid oocyte. So oocyte is the egg and another haploid tiny polar body. So just like the first meiotic division was unequal, so the second meiotic division is also unequal. So the sperm now fuses with the ovum. So now happens the fertilization and this leads to the formation of zygote. Fine. So sex of the baby is determined at this time. So this is how fertilization happens. Alright, clear so far? Any doubts? So how fertilization is happening? So I have taught you, clear? Right, so we move forward. So once fertilization has happened, so the process of implantation happens, right? So how implantation happens? The zygote is now present in the ampulla. So now the zygote undergoes series of mitotic divisions and it reaches the oviduct. So it reaches the uterus because implantation happens in the endometrium of the uterus, right? So the zygote now is present in the ampulla right after fertilization. Now the zygote will undergo mitotic divisions and will gradually move towards the uterus, endometrium of the uterus. So cleavage of the zygote as it moves towards the uterus is called as blastomere. Okay, so it divides into 2-cell stage, 4-cell stage, 8-cell stage, 16-cell stage, that is, it forms daughter cells, right? So the embryo at the 8 to 16-cell stage is particularly called as the morula. So morula becomes the blastocyst, where the cavity is separate, the inner cells are separate, and then you have the implantation. So this is where the implantation happens. Right, so what are they saying? So now imagine this is the zygote, the fusion has happened. So once the zygote is formed, the zygote is in the ampullary region. So imagine this is the uterus. So the uterus has 3 layers. On the inner layer, it has to get implanted. So directly it will not come in one single force to get implanted. So this zygote will undergo a series of cleavage to form daughter cells. So first it will form the 2-cell stage, the 4-cell stage, 6-cell stage and all. So when it forms the 8 to 16-cell stage, it is called as morula. So once it forms the morula, after which it forms the blastocyst. So it is like this. So this is how the blastocyst is. So if you see, the blastocyst has a cavity-like structure. The inner layer of the blastocyst is called as the inner cell mass. The outer layer is called as the trophoblast. So once it reaches the blastocyst stage here, then the implantation happens. The trophoblast attaches to the endometrium of the uterus. So when it gets implanted, when it gets embedded in the endometrium of the uterus, so this process is implantation. So once implantation has happened, so then you have full-fledged pregnancy for the next 9 months. So after fertilization, it is implantation. Implantation is followed by embryogenesis, that is development of the embryo. Alright? Yes? Exactly like this. So the zygote is formed, 2-cell stage, 4-cell stage, 8 to 16-cell stage is the morula. Then it forms a cavity, the outer layer and the inner layer. So this is this is your trophoblast. Then you have the inner cell mass. Then the implantation starts. So this is how the process of implantation happens. Alright? Okay. So with this we'll stop. In the next class, I'll continue with embryogenesis, the last part. How does the development of the embryo take place? Okay. So with this we'll conclude. So I'll finish off this chapter. We'll say a goodbye to this chapter on Wednesday. And after that we have a series of very interesting sessions. I will let you know what very soon. So until then, you guys have to stay tuned. And if you genuinely like my way of teaching, so please do like, share and subscribe. So thank you once again for watching my lecture. Stay tuned. I'll meet you on Wednesday. So until then, take care and bye.